others may feel.
Your personality then? What's that?
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
So that is about your innate as a disposition, but it's also a decision you make. Mm-hmm. It's also an active, there's an active component to it. It's not like a blind thing.
What is your disposition? Your disposition is also a product
of your mind,
of your previous experiences.
No, exactly.
It's not just a product of your birth.
I'm just thinking about it because I'm thinking about my friends and how I have like friends from different circles of life, and they've grown up with different like family setups, different opportunities, different privileges and stuff. But I feel like there's certain people from those different circles that stand out to have like a different sort of passion or something.
But you see that throughout human history, don't you? So you have.
But is that from you then, or is that from? Do you think that's from like? Okay, there's two. I have two questions. One, is that from you, or is that from things that life has taught you? But if it is that,
when you say is that from you, what do you mean?
Is that something that is from within
that you're born with?
Is specific to you as a person?
But they all are, I think. But it depends on what you mean by. Is it something you're born with, or is it something you pick up along the way?
Work out. Because they're still very personal. Those things are very personal.
At the end of let's say as you get older and older, if you look at a person who's in their 50s or 60s or 70s or 80s or whatever, they'll have certain dispositions, certain mannerisms, behaviours, likes and dislikes. They weren't born with all of them.
Yeah.
They've picked up those things along the way because of their experiences. Yeah. A person can become bitter, or a person can become happy, or a person can become joyful based on their life experiences.
Yeah. And you can also teach yourself, I think, to be able to have a much more positive outlook. You can recognise, look, actually these are the traits in me that I don't quite like. This has taken me on a more negative journey, and these are the things that I want to eradicate. And there are great sort of scholars and great speakers out there that constantly remind you of the fact that actually if you look at the world in a more positive way, if you try to be more happy, if you try to give more, that ultimately can affect your outlook. When you change your outlook, it can change your circumstance. It can change your direction in life.
Yeah.
So you are governing that a lot. Yeah. It's not something that's predestined. It's not something that's sort of set in stone already. Oh, that has to be your path. You can change that path. Yeah. And that's a really important thing to remember. And I think the people that you meet that do stand out are those people that have that sense of inner belief in themselves, that they can do something that changes their destiny.
That's what I was trying to say, that throughout human history, whether it's scientists or inventors or philosophers or builders or this or whatever it is, architects and so on, you see famous people in all of these very different spheres of life. Mm-hmm. But the thing that allows people to get to the top of their game, if you like, is this determination, is courage. But it's also this idea of making mistakes and not being afraid to make mistakes. Because nobody gets things right first time round.
Yeah. And also I think that's a really important component to this, because what that means is that everybody has that ability to be determined within that. It's just that some people choose to use it. Some people choose
that's what I mean,
to.
But I feel like it's so much more present in some people, and
so I think that I think, as I say, everybody has it. It's just how many people decide that they want to use.
You make choices. You make choices with life, don't you?
I don't know. It baffles me that so many people that are from the more privileged place in my life, or privileged backgrounds, they seem to. They overlook the others that might have that same determination and stuff because they might not be in a similar position to where they're at.
It will often be
even in education.
Sometimes it will be the case where the person who struggled more will actually end up. It's like the tortoise and the hare analogy. If you think about that story that everybody knows, and the person who you expect to be the slower person actually ends up being the animal ends up winning. Because it's that sustained. It's a marathon.
Yeah. Sorry. But with that though, so I obviously I feel like I can see the people that have that determination. So I think some people have that determination more, and some people have more of the opportunities. So they're at a greater position right now in life. But I'm thinking the people that have that determination obviously I ideally would want them to be really successful if they go and achieve that. But realistically, will they reach that point in their future?
Yeah. So again, I think this is where I think opportunities do make a massive difference, and this is where I think, I mean, there's several things here, because one, the fact that, when you have more affluent people and they haven't seen the sort of struggle and strife that other people have been through, there's a sense of feeling that actually they deserve to be where they are, and other people just haven't worked hard enough to get there, which is completely false. It's just, and there's an element of arrogance in that, isn't there?
I think so much arrogance.
That actually you are almost better because, and we deserve this because, and that's why we're given it. But these guys haven't worked hard enough. But you've seen the reality. Actually, that's not, necessarily the case. But I think the other thing is this idea of when you're in a place where you don't like what you have around me and you want to break away from that, but you don't know what that other is. It's a very, very difficult thing to do. Recognizing that actually by being with people, by reading, by watching things that show you aspiration, show you opportunities and goals that you wouldn't see before, you can now start to break that in ways that you wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. You can find mentors, you can find groups that allow you to understand how the world works, that enables you to be able to see past just what's around you and aspire to much greater things. And I think we have to constantly tap into that.
And I think you can't underestimate the impact that hunger has. Because if a person is hungry, you can have all the opportunities. You can have actually I don't want to undermine this. I mean, I agree with what you're saying. I don't want to downplay the importance of privilege and so on. It gives you a tremendous boost. But a person who's hungry, and that's what I was trying to say with the tortoise and hare analogy. A person who's hungry can come ahead, because sometimes if you've got only one option. And your back's against the wall and you've got nowhere else to go, the only way you can go is up. The only way you can go is forward. A person who's got lots of opportunities can often get confused and baffled by their opportunities.
And you see it so much.
They have so much, and it makes them become lazy.
And complacent to that.
It's like, it's like if you go to the Rocky movies, it's the Rocky 3, Rocky 4 analogies, right? So in Rocky 3, you have Mr. T's figure who comes out of nowhere and trains in the worst gyms, while Rocky is in that by now is successful. So he's got all of he's got luxury, he's got all of the bells and whistles in terms of his training facilities and so on. Mr. T trains in these really dingy, dark gyms, but comes and beats him. Because it's about hunger. When you're at the top, sometimes the only way is down. But when you're climbing up the mountain, the only way is up. Right? So you've got to remember those sorts of things, that it's not about where you are. That's what I'm trying to say. Privilege is important. And as I said at the beginning, I'd like to live in a society where there is no advantage of one person over another, where everybody's at the same starting point. I don't think we'll ever live there, because for me that's almost like a paradise. The reality is that people will, as long as one person has more money than the next person, you'll have privilege, right? So, but given that privilege is there, we should completely work to minimize it. I completely accept that, but at the same time, hungry people will always make it.
It reminds me actually of the saying of the Prophet, peace be upon him, when there were people that came to him, poor people that came to him and said that, look, it's unfair that all of the rich people have run away with the opportunity to gain all of these rewards, because they can pay, they can look after, they can give more to charity, they can look after people around them because they have more wealth. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, turns around and said, no, you've got plenty of opportunities to do good and gain reward from God, but you have to look for it.
And it could be excuses people make all the time as well. That I feel like that what you were just saying then just made me think of how many excuses people will make. Like even people that have more opportunities around them, they'll make so many excuses.
Yeah, that we can't. Yeah. And that victimhood mentality is a really dangerous thing. You know, that feeling that, oh my goodness, I can't do anything.
Yeah.
That, you know, that everything's against me. I've had so many, you know, and it's a very it's not just negative for that individual. It's negative, you know, debilitating for the people around them as well, because you feel like you're in a rut and you're never going to be able to get out of it. And nothing anyone can say.
To me, it's almost the opposite of what religion was designed for.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Because religion tells you that there's always hope. Even in the darkest of moments, there's always hope.
Yeah.
And you never see the Prophet ﷺ take his people and push them more into a sense of despair.
Yeah.
He always lifts them out of despair and gives them hope.
And he comes from the most dire of circumstances.
Even at the most difficult time, you know, in Mecca when the Quraysh are oppressing the Muslims and literally torturing them. And they come to him and they say, what can we do? You know, what's going on here? You know, you told us to believe in this religion, and now we're being, you know, pushed around and punished and tortured. The Prophet reminded them of the suffering of the people of the past.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, oh my God, it's so bad, things are so difficult, things are so bad, he tried to remind them of when things were worse, so that they could at least recognize that they have there's some positivity. Even in those deep, dark moments, he was giving them a sense of hope. Yeah. And I think that's what a good leader does. A leader gives you hope and gives you options and opportunities and a vision for a way out. Yeah. A bad leader re-emphasizes your despair and tells you, oh my God, things are so bad. You think that's bad. Let me tell you what's even worse than that.
Yeah.
You know, and unfortunately, we've got too many people like that today. You know, in around us. Yeah.
But then how? No, you go.
No, well, I was just going to add that the idea that, you know, people run away from struggle, seeing it such a, you know, as such a negative thing, that there could be nothing that we can gain from this. But actually, just the idea of struggling and working hard and pulling yourself away it's actually so satisfying to the soul. Yeah. You know, from feeling that you've come from nothing and achieved something from your own, you know, sweat and blood and hard work and, you know, toil. Actually means something. It makes a difference. It gives you a sense of passion and purpose and sets you goals.
But also dignity, because I think a human being needs to feel that they are in control of their own destiny. Yes. Allama Iqbal, you know, 100 years ago, when Muslims were going through a very difficult time, and he felt that Muslims needed. So this was, you know, the famous poet philosopher from India. He felt that Muslims needed this confidence boost, that they needed, you know, waking up, and they needed this sense of pride in themselves because they'd lost it. Because of colonialism and so on, they felt defeated. And he said, you know, he wrote lots of poetry, and one of his famous lines of poetry in his poem around Khudi, the self, he said, elevate yourself so much that even when God comes to write your decree, he asks you, what do you want? Yeah. I mean, that's, you know, it's poetic, so it's not literal, but it's saying that, you know, have dignity, have pride in yourself, so much so that you can write your own destiny. Everything is up for being written. It's not, you know, you're not under the control of some sort of predetermined, predestined order where you have to live a life of sufferance. Yeah. You can elevate yourself and escape from it.
I do know of, you know, massively inspirational people that have been through really difficult circumstances that have managed to find something in that gives them that hope. I think it is that hope that, you know, that pulls them through, that makes them see, you know, there was something recently that I was reading about where, you know, a female was raped and went through some really difficult circumstances. But she, you know, turns that into something where she decides that actually she wants to ensure that other women don't go through what she went through. And that gives her the hope to latch on to, that gives her that purpose that she needs to pull her out of her own misery, to seek something that makes a difference. I think any difficulty or any circumstance that people are faced with, you still have that element of choice. You still have the chance to work out how are you going to react to that. So that's an awful thing that's happened. But your reaction to what's happened can make the whole, an entire difference to which path you then take. Now you can either, and none of these things are easy at all. So I don't want to judge people. I don't want to sort of say, look, I would have, I would have done things. I don't know. Right, none of us know what we would be like. And there's all sorts of other issues that come into, mental health will play a part. Your physical circumstances will play a part. So none of these things are very clear cut. But the only thing sometimes you are in control of is how you mentally choose to react to something.
Yeah.
And making a decision at that point will affect how emotionally you react and what steps you then take to be able to move yourself into a different direction.
There's always light after the darkness. There's always hope. There's always, however long the suffering goes on for, and it can be horrific, it's at that darkest moment of despair and suffering that you need to have what Islam calls sabr.
Yeah.
And sabr isn't just some passive, just waiting for things to happen. Because that's how people often paint it. So just be patient. It's like waiting. Sabr isn't waiting. Sabr is an active endurance. It's more like endurance than waiting for something to happen. And if you look at the life, of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, but modern day people, you look at people like Steve Jobs or J.K. Rowling, the pain, the difficulties that they had to endure before they made it into their successful icons that they are. J.K. Rowling, you look at her story, I think most people have probably heard about her story, so I'm not going to repeat it, but there was that moment in her life when she had nothing. And she knew that she had this story and she could write something with it. Yeah. And she did. And now she's one of the richest people around us and household name. Everybody knows of her. Steve Jobs, look at the revolution that he created in technology. As from someone who was an orphan. Someone who wasn't even raised by his own parents. So that in a nutshell gives you an example of how origins don't dictate your end.
And the Quran always reminds us, doesn't it, of this idea of surely with every difficulty there is ease. So every time you're going to be tested with something, you're also going to be given something. But are your eyes open to that? Are you ready to receive that? Are you ready to see who's there to help you and what chances there are to sort of break out of that? And sometimes we forget about that, so I think that's a really important reminder. There's verses in the Quran which talk about, Ad-Duha is a really nice one, which talks about the idea of, have you forgotten about, don't feel that God's left you. Don't feel that in such despair that you have nothing. That have you forgotten, this happened in your life. And, I rescued you from this, or that happened in your life, and, this circumstance. And it's a really good way of, moving positively forward by reflecting upon, not taking yourself down this sort of very dark, dim road of feeling nothingness, there's no hope, there's only despair, but pulling yourself up by recognising that actually there's other things here, there's other things that have happened in my life that have made it okay. There is that light, as you said, there is that hope.
Trials and tribulations help to make you into the person that you are destined to become. And of course, your reactions will dictate which way you go. I firmly believe they help us to get stronger. And I
think that's that.
Now, I'm not saying we should just go through that deliberately, just actively look for that. But
I think life will give you.
But life throws those things at you, and it shifts you, it moves you, it builds you. It's character building,
And every generation will have their own sort of tests and we talked right at the beginning about this idea of moving forward, but actually I think your generation has got it incredibly hard, and there's so many things.
I think like you said, every generation will. I think it's also important to look at other people's things, like as you're my parents, looking at what you went through, because it's important to understand for yourself. For even if there's so many different things now, there always will be, but it's important to understand other people's things so you can learn from that as well as learning from your own experiences. So, I just love it. No, but I think that everything you just said at the end, I feel like that's empowering because it allows you to have control over what you want in your future and what you want your destiny to be.
It's an active decision that you make. Then actually, you either choose to give that to someone else, or you either say that actually this is within me.
That's right. Don't give that up.
I can be in the driving seat here. I can decide which way this goes now. This has been terrible, or this has been whatever. I can decide now what my next step is meant to be.
And this is not to belittle people's pain and people's difficulties. I mean, we can't.
That's right.
Who knows? We will. I might crumble under any of those situations that people out there are going through. So it's not to undermine that or to think that it's insignificant. It's not. But we, as Rabia was saying, we have one thing that we can do, and that is not give up control. And that can be, we were saying earlier about the start, the little stepping stones. It's one step after another step after another step after another step. Yeah. That's how we get back on track. And facing difficulties, facing problems, even facing a horrendous experience is sometimes just people's lot. It's just sometimes the way that life happens, It's how we then react and how we pick ourselves up and move forward.
Hunger. It is the hunger.
I'm hungry too, by the way.